Senator's White House laid out a shocking incident step by step, and when the questions got specific, Secretary Noem suddenly claimed she didn't know what they were talking about.
Let me start by noting that we have repeatedly said, our ranking member on the Senate Appropriations Committee, Senator Murray, has said that we are more than willing to fund TSA, more than willing to fund the Coast Guard, more than willing to fund FEMA, and that it is the administration that is holding those agencies hostage in order to extract additional funding for ICE and CBP. That is our quite clearly stated position, and I just wanted to recognize that now. Ms. Noem, I want to walk you through an incident that took place in Rhode Island. We have a courthouse in Rhode Island, our Superior Court. The court had an agreement with your organization not to conduct operations in that courthouse. Despite that agreement, your officers went in to conduct operations in that courthouse. They went in plain clothes and masked, so maybe they were aware of the agreement, maybe they weren't. Either way, it was unprofessional not to honor the agreement with the court. There is also a court rule against photographing people in the courthouse. They were photographing people in the courthouse. They either didn't know or didn't care about that court rule. Either way, it was unprofessional. They were pursuing an intern and taking photos of this young intern who was not the person supposedly sought. The intern was in high school. The person sought was in his 30s. It shouldn't be too hard to tell the difference. They couldn't. It was unprofessional. A state judge escorted the intern out to his car to take him back to high school. The agents didn't recognize the judge. They operate against the agreement in a courtroom and don't bother to know who the judges are. Again, unprofessional. They followed the judge out to his parked car, which was parked in a spot reserved for judges. Whether or not they already knew he was a judge, it does not take much in terms of powers of deduction to understand that the person getting into a car in a parking spot reserved for judges is probably a judge. Again, unprofessional. Then they threatened to smash his windows and drag him from the car. A judge with a high school intern in the car who's not the guy they're looking for. That kind of escalation seems unprofessional and irresponsible. Then they held the kid for half an hour in another vehicle while they figured out that, in fact, the high school kid was not the 30-plus-year-old person that they were supposedly looking for. Nobody was hurt, but there was nothing professional about that entire exchange. And I would ask you to send a signal down to your folks to stop that kind of dangerous and unprofessional nonsense, particularly in our courthouses. Let me ask you, why don't you deconflict with local enforcement when you operate?
Our officers do. We welcome cooperation from local law enforcement and want them at the state level, at the local level, to cooperate with us so that we can continue to conduct our federal operations with the safety of the cooperation that comes from those types of agreements.
Deconflicting and cooperating are two different things. They can overlap, but they are two different things. You deconflict when you plan an operation in another law enforcement agency's jurisdiction, like here, the court sheriffs, and let them know what you're going to do. This all could have been headed off if you'd spoken to if your people had spoken to the sheriffs first and said, we're concerned about this guy. Oh no, he's an intern, he's in high school. None of this was necessary if they had bothered to deconflict. So please, send the message down to your people that there's a reason that deconflicting is standard law enforcement practice for, among other things, officer safety. Will you do that?
Yes, sir, but I will tell you that our law enforcement are being doxxed at unprecedented levels. So at times we've run into situations in sanctuary cities or in sanctuary states where notifying that local law enforcement on some of these operations has doxxed them and their families and leaked a law enforcement operation, which puts people's lives in jeopardy. So they absolutely want to work with cooperative local law enforcement. And in that case specifically,
I suspect that there's a big difference between non-cooperation and actual interference with your operations, but I'll reserve that to a question for the record so you can substantiate that. Could you explain this?
Sir, I'm looking at a picture of an interior, looks like a bedroom.
Of an airplane.
Yes, sir.
You're not familiar with that?
These photos are not accurate. If you're referring to the airplanes that the Department of Homeland Security has purchased and are purchasing, we're using them for long-range command and control aircraft that is dictated in statute by Congress for the Department of Homeland Security to have a plane.
Luxury jet with a bedroom in it?
Yeah, we used a 737. I've been on it once, but it is being used by other administration officials, and it is used for command and control flights for the department. The department has found that in purchasing our aircraft, that we will save the taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars.
Does it have a bedroom in
In
it?
fact, we spent $1.42 billion on ICE deportation flights
Does it have a
last
bedroom
year.
in it?
I believe it's being refurbished and not having a bedroom in it, so it is being refurbished.
What kind of
This
deportee justifies being flown out of the country in a luxury jet with a bedroom and accommodations like this?
There are aircraft being purchased that will be utilized for executive air travel and for deportations.
Well, your
If you
people
remember,
said
in the
that this
past,
was
we
gonna
have
be
used
deportations.
we have used jets of this size and this configuration for deportations in the past. If you remember,
In this configuration. By this configuration, you mean
I
with a
didn't see
bedroom
the
and
inside
luxury
of them.
accommodations like this
That
you've
plane-
used for deportations. Is that true?
Sir, we have 737s that are being purchased by the department to replace contracts that we have on ICE deportations. That's what they're going to be used for. And in fact, the Coast Guard is the only entity within the Department of Homeland Security that has jets at this point in time. They had two G5s that were 20 to 25 years old
Let me ask
that are
you
being
about
replaced
the
so that they can
response
continue to serve our
from
Coast Guard and our military
Some senior
for
administration
years to come.
officials about these aircraft. They've been reported as saying, although they don't want to say publicly this, but individuals described as senior administration officials have described these airplane purchases as the world's worst deal and an abuse of federal funds. Can you tell me what the Republicans on this committee who voted for what I call the billionaires bill that gave you the money to buy these jets knew about your plans to acquire luxury jets when they voted for that money?
The dollars for these airplanes was appropriated by Congress. In fact, it's mandated from Congress and rules that you've given us that we need to have a long-range command and control aircraft that will seat up to 17 people in the Department of Homeland Security for national security purposes. We are complying with the law. Those planes are being refurbished and will be utilized
we'll
for that,
see.
and they'll be
Two quick
utilized
questions
by
in my
members of
last
the
minute, if you don't
administration and
mind.
other components.
First-
they will also cut our costs, sir,
First, in my last
by
minute,
almost
if you don't mind,
40%. We are saving
can
the
you-
taxpayer 40% by purchasing our own aircraft
May I
and
have a
operating
minute?
them rather than being susceptible to the contracts that they have today.
We have an extra 2 minutes to fill in the filibuster there.
I'll give you 30 seconds beyond the 44
Will
seconds
you-
you got now.
Truthfully answer a question for the record about your role in stopping the civil rights investigation into the Minnesota shootings.
Sir, I don't know what you're talking about. I did not stop any investigations whatsoever.
Will you testify truthfully if you get a QFR?
Yes, I testify truthfully. I did not
And will you
stop.
testify in the District of Columbia Federal Court contempt proceeding?
Sir, I do not know what you're referencing, and I would hope for some context.
The Federal District Court contempt proceeding related to the deportation, contrary to a court order, of individuals to Venezuela. Will you testify in that proceeding?
Sir, I think that you're referencing something that I have a gag order to, but I can certainly follow up with you.
My time's up. Thank you.
What began as a routine Senate oversight hearing quickly turned into a sharp confrontation when senators challenged Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem over a series of controversial enforcement actions. Lawmakers described an incident in Rhode Island that raised serious questions about professionalism, coordination, and accountability, suggesting federal agents operated without basic safeguards that law enforcement agencies typically follow. Senators detailed how federal officers allegedly entered a courthouse despite an agreement not to conduct operations there. Agents reportedly wore plain clothes and masks, photographed individuals despite court rules, and mistakenly pursued a high school intern instead of their intended target. The situation escalated dramatically when a sitting judge escorting the student was confronted and forcibly removed from his vehicle. The exchange exposed a deeper issue: coordination between federal and local authorities. Senators emphasized that deconfliction, notifying local law enforcement before operations, is standard practice designed to prevent dangerous misunderstandings. Without it, officials argued, officers, civilians, and even judges can be placed at unnecessary risk, turning enforcement into chaos rather than public safety. Secretary Noem defended her department, arguing that notifying local agencies can expose officers to doxing and threats. But senators pushed back, noting that cooperation and deconfliction are not the same thing. The distinction mattered because critics said the Rhode Island incident appeared preventable, a breakdown not of policy limits, but of leadership decisions and operational discipline. The hearing intensified when lawmakers questioned the purchase of government aircraft described as luxury-configured jets. Senators pressed Noem on whether deportations justified planes reportedly equipped with executive accommodations. Her responses focused on cost savings and congressional authorization, yet repeated questions about bedrooms and configurations left visible tension in the room. Then came the most striking moment. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse asked whether Noem had intervened in a civil rights investigation and whether she would testify in court proceedings tied to deportations allegedly carried out despite judicial orders. Noem responded that she didn't know what he was referring to, a moment critics say reflected either genuine confusion or strategic distance from controversy. Oversight hearings are meant to test transparency, not produce uncertainty. And when senators walk through detailed incidents only to meet denial or ambiguity, the public is left asking a bigger question. Who is accountable when federal power goes wrong? If you believe oversight matters and leadership should answer directly, stay informed, stay engaged, and follow Democratic lens for the moments that shape accountability in real time.